because they don't have to recreate a whole bunch of shared components, and they're leveraging common data sets that are used across the enterprise or maybe even across all of society. So now you can imagine your services like getting a passport or getting your food benefit or applying for a driver's license. Those can all adapt very quickly on how the government or the cabinet wants to change those rules. And they can adapt more quickly because they're relying on some shared infrastructure of authentication, of payments, and of a data exchange that lets them then access all sorts of data that the government's collected about them, so you don't have to collect it over and over and over again. This is the very same structure that I see emergent in Bangladesh, and the team at AQI has been trying to drive across the government there. It's made me so excited in following the work that's happening in Bangladesh, and I want to congratulate all on that. The key thing here is all about the interoperability of these pieces. So what it allows for you to have is, because you have this shared infrastructure that's stable, you can then have this high variability where you can change things frequently up here, and low variability where you can updating things relatively slowly down here. Maybe just to close out, I say this is going to be a huge driver for changing the way governments work. And that's part of what we're seeing from our colleagues in Estonia and our colleagues in India. So for example, you can then come in and you can choose to say, let's fix all of the website services. And then based on making those improvements, learn what are the kind of middle pieces we'd want to fix, and then finally go after the data. And that's kind of the approach the UK is taking and Madagascar is taking. But alternatively, you could actually do the inverse. Let's organize all the data first and see if we can get that to get organized, and then we can start building common services on top of it. That's what the X-Road has done in Estonia, and why its story has been so dramatic is because organizing this data has been incredibly difficult. But once you do it, it gives you enormous flexibility. But the Indians are taking a very different approach, which is actually they're coming in right at the middle, and with Aadhaar, UPI, DigiWallet, they're creating those common components first, and they're using that to assert influence up and make the websites more organized across the whole enterprise. And then they're also using it to start to organize the data down below. So I think there's a lot of paths for thinking about how this type of approach can help you. And I'm excited to pass it over to Anir, who's been such a leader in Bangladesh and someone I've definitely been looking at to see how we can learn in academia to help teach more and more governments around the world. Anir, over to you.
এখানে ক্লিকারটা তো নাই, আমাকে তো বলা হলো এখানে আছে। Dave, thank you very much for that introduction. Thank you. আমার স্লাইডটা চলে আসে। Honorable Planning Minister, Honorable ICT State Minister, respected ICT Secretary, EDBCC, my friend Maylin, we've become very good friends actually in the last few years. Himika, thanks for the fantastic moderation. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, friends from media, colleagues who have put in an enormous amount of effort in the last couple of weeks to make this event happen. I mean, it's been an incredible effort for a large number of people within ICT division. How DPI approach saves money. You build the core once and use it, reuse it again and again. So let's talk about the Bangladesh example. What has happened? Our respected ICT Secretary already talked about some of the savings that we have seen in terms of what we call TCV. 19 billion days saved, $22 billion saved, 13 billion visits eliminated. How did this happen? Because we put together access DPIs, 4 types of access DPIs. We have digital centers where 7 to 10 million people visit every month. We have the national portal on the internet. We heard from Vint Cerf, one of the fathers of the internet. So the internet portal has about 30 million people visiting that every month, receiving information and services. We also have smartphone MyGov app with 1,700 services downloaded millions of times that provide service to the smartphone users, 52% of the users in the country, only about half. And then for the other 50%, they can actually call into this national helpline number, 333, which became a lifeline during COVID. We actually provided medical services, telemedicine service over 333. We tracked the disease because people self-reported their symptoms. So these are the 4 types of access mechanisms for people who have access to the internet, who have access to smartphones, and then people who don't. So we're looking at a zero digital divide world in the next few years, but that's the journey that we started many years ago when our Honorable Prime Minister made the clarion call in 2008 to build a digital nation. And we really started with what I say sticks and stones, and we have made significant progress. I don't know if you can see these numbers. We took a DPI approach for our payments, digital payments to citizens, the payments that we call G2P, government to citizen payment, government to person payments. Our social safety nets, about 16% of our national budget, 2.5% or more than that of our GDP. So significant. And if you look at the numbers from 2016 and 2023, you'll see that remarkable progress has happened. We've actually digitized 100% of G2P payments, where it was less than 1% in 2016. We have digitized salaries and pensions as well, and this took a DPI approach that Dave just explained. We built the bottom, which is the core, and we built the top on top of the foundation. Now, when we talk about digital public infrastructure, DPI, let me contrast that with the physical infrastructure. In physical infrastructure, you see bricks and mortar coming together to build roads, highways, bridges, towers. And in similar fashion, in the digital space, you have the building blocks. You've all played with Legos, if not now, maybe decades ago, but you play with them with your children and your nephews. So these Lego blocks in the digital space are what we are building as the foundation of DPI. And these Lego blocks allow us to build very complex structures. Like you see on the right, we have the replica of our parliament building using Legos, because you can actually build complex structures using these simple building blocks. This is a very important slide, a bit busy slide. In Bangladesh, we have said that DPI actually has 5 layers. The bottom layer, they've already described some of that, is the ID layer. That's where you identify a person or a business uniquely using, for a person, it's a biometric verification. For a business, it's some kind of a unique identifier. The second layer is the payments layer. We already saw, Himika already talked about how India in 9 years went from 20% of financial inclusion to 80% of financial inclusion. Using a non-DPI approach, this would have taken 50 years, and India did that in 9 years because it took a DPI approach. The third layer is the data layer. We've already seen that we're building digital silos. Himika talked about how in the first decade or so, we actually built silos because that's how we actually pictured things. Agriculture, within its 18 departments, it built 18 different silos. Health, within its many different departments, it built digital silos and they did not interoperate. But now we have taken a DPI approach and we're actually building things that interoperate, that talk to each other. That's the data. The fourth layer is the services layer. You see on top the different, about 10 different service sectors that we mentioned. Tax, land, justice, education, health. And this is where the conversation happens with the citizens. So citizens want services. How do I get a passport? How do I get land records? How do I change my national ID? Some correction that needs to be done. And ministries and departments also provide services, and that's where the conversation happens. So their service is an important layer in our DPI journey. And the last layer is the access. I talked about 4 types of access that we have created in Bangladesh to serve all 170 plus million people in the country, all 170 million people. And if we apply that stack idea, the DPI stack, we're calling it the Inclusive Digital Transformation Stack, IDX stack. If we apply it across different sectors, health, education, agriculture, you said it fits. In education, you need a learner's ID or a student ID. In agriculture, you need a farmer's ID. In health, you need a patient ID. And then you have the other layers on top, and this fits in every sector, and that's how we are now building all our building blocks. Now I'll end with 5 slides, which are very critical. If you look at the non-DPI thinking, it was vertical, silos. If you look at the DPI thinking, it's actually horizontal, and the verticals sit on top of that. There was no horizontals before DPI approach. Non-DPI approach is silo. It actually has boxes that don't talk to each other. The DPI, we have been talking about whole of government. But recently, especially during COVID, we have been talking about whole of society. But now, we're talking about whole of world. because DPI transcends the boundaries of nations. And that's what we are seeing from the US, from India. Maylin is originally from Singapore, and we actually heard from Uganda in the morning and many other countries. Throughout the day, we actually saw participants either coming in person or through digital means to talk to us and praise the effort that Bangladesh is taking, but also informing us of the approach that they are taking so that we can collaborate through South-South cooperation that Maylin talked about, with Dima leading the South-South effort within UN. Non-DPI is non-standard data that does not talk to each other. We have, within health, we have digital space in DG Health, Director General of Health Services, and we have digital space in Director General of Family Planning. Same software, same patients, but we have no idea whether they are the same patients because data don't talk to each other within health. In DPI approach, we'll actually have global standard data. So not just local standards, but global standard data. For health, we'll use FHIR standards. We're already doing that. Non-DPI approach is primarily provider-centric because we think of ourselves as ministries. I'm a Ministry of Health, I'm Ministry of Agriculture, I'm Ministry of Education, and within ministries, we also have departments. And the department heads, the DGs think about their departments only, not even across the ministry. In the DPI approach, it's citizen-centric. Citizen doesn't care about the boundaries within the government, the silos within the government. A citizen is a farmer, a citizen is the father of a student, a citizen is a patient. So it goes across all different ministries, all different departments, and that's where the DPI approach comes in. And then finally, non-DPI approach actually is widening digital divide. The digital transformation in many countries is actually creating a new class of marginalized, a new underclass. So what we're saying with DPI approach, we'll actually eliminate digital divide and we'll reach zero digital divide, the promise from Bangladesh that we're leading. So these are the 5 things, going from vertical to horizontal, going from silo to integrated, going from non-standard to global standard, going from provider-centric to citizen-centric, and going from widening digital divide to eliminating it. And these are the promises. If you see the presentation that the Honorable ICT State Minister made to the Honorable Prime Minister on the 3rd of August, the first meeting we had with the Prime Minister on Smart Bangladesh Planning, these are the terms that came up. And that's where DPI shines and will propel Bangladesh forward faster, cheaper, and more reliably to achieve zero digital divide. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Eves and Anibhai, for the insightful keynote presentation. Sharing, learning, and aligning ourselves for future plans and investments. This is the reason why we are having this conference. So now we'll hear of the Baltic state of Estonia. Let's hear the message from Mr. Sikut.
An advisory in which we work with government leaders around the world, penetrate all spheres of governmental life in that sense. And it's been really a journey and a success story to TPI. Now, technology, people don't care about technology. They help this, but fundamentally, it's the service redesign that matters the most. Secondly, how to deal with legacy. We have to be ready to kill what we have to move to better platforms. What I believe is the future of digital government and services is that they have a special need for that. So for that, obviously, artificial intelligence greatly helps, but next sector and so on. And that accelerated our AI adoption greatly, just as it had done before with our
development and more. This conference is a true sense, in a way, hybrid